Hi everyone, welcome to Neve's Art Journaling channel. Today we're going to be renovating a page that I really hated in my art journal. So these are the two pages that I had in my art journal. They were pages that I did really quickly one day using up some new Dina Wakley collage papers and so on that I'd got, and I was really excited to get in and use them. But when I went back and had a look at it again, these pages really bugged me in my journal. They just were dark and they didn't look right and they just didn't sit right with me and they didn't bring me any joy to look at them. So I went back and decided that I wanted to do something with it. I was sick of looking at them. So what I'm doing now is I've got some collage paper, and this is from Little Raven Ink's Patreon page. Courtney Diaz. It's one of her papers from the September printables, and a great trick I learnt was to print onto sticker paper. So I'm just tearing it up and sticking it into my book. Really simple, don't need any glue, it's just sticking there. Then what I'm going to do is to go in with some Dina Wakley heavy body paints in lots of bright colours, because part of the reason I think I didn't like the left hand page was it was so dark. Now night's one of my favourite colours and I love the contrast of it, but I just made that page too dark. The left hand side was trying to use a piece of the white tissue paper, white collage faces paper, onto the burlap and use the white as a drawing template so I go back over it with the Stabilo or pencil, but I really didn't like it in the end, so I wanted to cover it up. And originally I just planned to cover up the left hand side, but as I was doing this and I had collage paper left over, I thought I'd do both pages at the same time, just bring a bit of unity back into it. So in the background I've used some lime, lemon, blushing and magenta paints just to fill in the gaps and just to bring some brightness back in the page. There are also colours that really coordinate well with the colours that were in the collage papers from the printables. Now I don't mind if things are peeping through from the background because that adds some layers, but as I said before, I really wanted to bring back some of this brightness. So once I'd done that, I decided I was going to start with some stencils, and I'm using the Dina Wakley new stencils Spill and Write and Paint and Colour. I really had no idea where I was going with this page. I just knew I wanted to cover up the background. But I wanted to, I haven't been very creative in a little while, and I desperately needed to get out into my art space and to do some work. So this sort of, I just wanted to go back and remind myself what I do and why I love doing it. So spilling and painting and writing, colouring and stamping, they're all the things I do, they're all the things I love, they're all the things that bring me joy. So this is what this page is about, is, you know, trying to bring some joy back into my journal and trying to bring some creativity back for me. So I'm doing a bit of a word jumble here, just stamping this or stenciling this all over, just using a makeup sponge and some gesso because I didn't have any white paint on hand, going through. And you can see I'm using barely any paint. I just want the colours in the background. This is probably all going to be covered over, but I just want some text in the back. And that's one thing I do find with a lot of the work that I do, is I tend to have text in some shape or form, whether it's through collage, through stencils or through stamping. I have collage in some shape or form on my, text in some shape or form on my page. So the piece of paper that you saw there was another of the Dina Wakley collage papers, and that's the original one that I used underneath the right hand page, except this one's in the black. I thought I'd bring that face back onto the page again, but in the black, so I could actually see what I was doing. I'm just going over with some ink and one of my favourite stencils, which is the Punchinella stencil from Dina Wakley as well, just to bring in some blackness back into the page, but not as much as I had before, and not as much darkness as I had before. It also picks up some of the black spots from the collage papers in the background. So with this I decided, seeing I was going to spill and colour and paint and stamp, that I'd actually show that that's what I was going to do. So I got out my Donna Downey paint utensils stencil, which I love, and again just with a makeup sponge trying not to move the stencil, and I apologise for the pouncing. Just going through with some black paint to put that stencil on. So again, you really don't need very, very much paint on your makeup sponge to do this. You can see how translucent it is on the bottom left hand side, and I just want to get the images there. So I don't want it particularly completely black. I'm quite happy for it to be slightly translucent, so you can see some of the images coming up through from before. So it's really liking what was happening here, and I was considering putting that stencil the whole way across through the page, but I decided I was still going to go with the face on the other side. And you can see from my quick flip through that Spill Right paint stamp colour stencil is one of my favourites at the moment. I'm using it on lots and lots of pages. So the idea I had with these paintbrushes is I wanted to have it looking like the paint was dripping from them. So I get out my Dylusions sprays and I'm going to spray them so they drip down. Now while I was doing this, I suddenly realised that realistically, if I had paint dripping down, it should probably actually, the paintbrushes and so on should be at the top of the page dripping down. But artistic license, and this is what happened. So I'm just spraying them on, trying to concentrate them and get the drips coming down. Because they're going over acrylic paint and collage, it's just sort of the darker colours are staining the page more so than the lighter colours. I'm not particularly worried that it's sort of a bit all over the place because obviously it's like a paint spill. But I particularly liked the darker colours that you could actually see where it had dyed it. So I go back in with some Heidi Swapp Colour Shine just to get a little bit of more colour, or more opaque colour, because it's a slightly different formula from the Dylusions inks. And I have learnt from experience, having paper towel underneath where you're working while you're doing those drips is a really, really good idea. So as you can see, it's a fairly subtle effect. I probably could have gone in with acrylic paint, watered down acrylic paint to get it more opaque and more obvious, but I'm quite happy with it just sort of being subtle in the background. So as I was doing this, I was getting happier and happier with the page I was doing, and it was inspiring me, so I figured why not write inspired on the page. So again, using a Donna Downey stencil, and I thought I'd go back to white again because I didn't want to have so much black on the page. And I'm just being careful just to put it on a little bit thicker than I would usually sponge on paint through a stencil, just so it's a little bit more opaque and it blocks out some of that black in the background. It also gives a sort of subtle nod to the words in the background that have sort of blended into the background. It sort of brings them back into focus again. So with my woman on the right hand side, what I'm doing is just trimming out the excess paper from around her face. She's sort of got a square border around it which I wanted to get rid of, and she fits in really, really nicely on the page. So what I'm going to do is cover my page in gel medium so I can glue it down. Now I'm quite generous with the gel medium in the background because I want it to go as translucent as possible. So I put it in, rub it down, and the great thing, this page is actually the burlap page, so you can see some of the texture in it. Now this burlap page has already got one layer of the collage tissue on it. It's got collage over the top, and I'm now putting a second piece of collage tissue on it, and you can still see the texture in it. So I really love working on the burlap pages using the collage papers. You can see here I put on the collage medium really, really generously, let it soak through, rubbed it into the page, and then I scraped off the excess. Now it doesn't stain your gloss medium, so it doesn't matter if you do that, but it just means it goes as translucent as possible and it gives you a really firm grip to the page. I'm going in with the Stabilo oil pencil just to finish off some of those lines, and particularly with the hair at the top so it doesn't just look cut off. To finish it off, drawing in her eyes, so just using a white, I think it's chalk pencil or a Posca paint pen, just to put a little bit more detail in. I find when I use the collage papers, while I really, really love them, sometimes the cloudiness of it gets to me a bit, but by putting a little bit more colour back in again, it makes it look deliberate. So by putting the paint pens over the top, it really starts to bring that face alive. And I decided I wanted to paint in some of her face as well. So I'm colouring in the hair with a really watered down acrylic. So this is Burnt Umber. And then going into the clothes, I think with some lime and some blushing. Again, just to bring back some of those colours from the background. And trying to be really careful not to make it very opaque, but just to bring some colour back in again. So particularly on the left-hand side, you can sort of see the background come through more than on the right-hand side. It's a bit of glare from the camera, from the light there. But just to add a little bit more colour back in and make it look like it's part of the page, that it's been painted in, rather than just stuck on top. So this is pretty much nearly the end of the process, apart from adding a little bit of journaling using a white Stabilo, no, not white Stabilo, a Uniball pen. Just testing it out over on the other side, see if it will go over the top. Unfortunately, my favourite white pen, the Sharpie Fine White Pen, my 3 pens that I have finally died, and because it's been discontinued, I haven't got any more, which devastates me, so I have to find a replacement for it, and this isn't really cutting it, but it does okay. So just putting in some journaling and finally popping over some paint splats, because you can. So this is my renovated page. From where it began, I am so much happier with it, and it just brings a smile to my face when I turn to it in my journal now. At the bottom of the face, I had some collage papers that I decided to add in as well, which says, art changes a person and people change the world, which for me with this page was really important. So thank you very much for watching. If you have a page that you really don't like in your journal, have a go at renovating it and see if you can change it to something that brings you joy as well. See you next time.